The strange thing about Maximus is that Gladiator introduces him through the one thing the film will spend the next 2 hours taking away from him: peace. His hand moves through wheat as if he is touching a life the war has not yet stolen from him. For a few seconds, the film lets us see Maximus before Rome learns how to use his suffering. Somewhere beyond the battlefield, he still believes there is a wife, a son, and a home waiting for him. That belief is what makes the opening so cruel. Maximus believes he is standing at the end of war, but he is really standing at the beginning of everything Rome is about to take from him. Commodus sees it too, and that is where the danger begins. Maximus does not have to challenge him, he only has to stand there, respected without asking, trusted without performing, loved in a way Commodus has spent his whole life begging for. To a man like Commodus, it is humiliation. By the time Maximus reaches the arena, the wheat field feels like something from another life. The hand that reached for home now grips a sword, just to stay alive. Before Maximus becomes the gladiator Rome remembers, he is a man watching the life he wanted disappear behind him, one piece at a time.
To understand how Maximus falls from Rome's most trusted soldier into the blood-soaked sand of the arena, we have to return to the moment he was closest to the life he wanted. At the beginning of Gladiator, Maximus is still the man Rome depends on. He leads the Roman army through the brutal campaign in Germania, wins the battle, and gives Marcus Aurelius the victory Rome came for. But after the fighting, Maximus does not look like a man hungry for more conquest. He looks like a man who believes he has finally earned the right to leave. Rome has taken years from him. Now, with the campaign finished, the life he carried in silence feels close again. Spain, soil, his wife, his son, a home waiting beyond the violence. But Marcus Aurelius sees him differently. Not as a soldier ready to disappear into peace, but as the last man Rome can still trust. Marcus knows the empire is rotting. He knows Commodus is not fit to inherit it. So he turns to the one man who never wanted the throne and asks him to protect Rome from the very power he refuses to desire. For Maximus, that trust is not a reward. It is one more wall between him and home. For Commodus, it is a wound. His father's choice confirms the fear he has carried his whole life. The crown may fall to him, but worthiness never will. So Commodus kills Marcus.
Maximus is condemned before he can understand how quickly his life has turned against him. The general who gave Rome victory becomes a threat to be erased before dawn. And while Maximus fights to survive, Rome reaches his home first. The wife and son he spent years trying to return to are murdered before he can reach them. The home he carried through every campaign becomes a grave. Maximus survives, but survival is not mercy. He is found half dead, taken from his land, sold as a slave, and thrown into a world where men are given weapons so strangers can enjoy watching them die. A Roman general is reduced to a body in the sand. But the real cruelty is quieter. The husband and father in him has nowhere left to go. And from that point on, every breath Maximus takes is no longer a step toward home. It is one step deeper into the empire that took everything from him.
That fall is where the film begins to show what Rome still cannot take from him. The army, the title, the emperor's trust, and the promise of home are gone. What remains is a wounded man being priced by strangers who have no idea what he used to be. But the arena begins to reveal it. At first, Maximus is just another slave among men who have already accepted that death is part of the job. He does not speak much. He does not beg for attention. He carries his grief like something too heavy to explain. Then, the fighting starts. And Maximus becomes impossible to ignore. He does not charge into violence like a man trying to prove himself. He reads it. The distance between bodies, the shape of a threat, the second before fear turns into panic. Around him, fear turns men into separate bodies. Maximus sees the only thing that can keep them alive: order. And when the gates open in the arena, Maximus does something more important than survive by himself. He pulls the men around him into formation. He tells them to stay together. He turns frightened slaves into something closer to soldiers. Respect does not arrive as admiration yet.
It begins as instinct. They do not know his name, but they know enough to follow him, because they can feel, before they understand, that this man has led others through death before.
Stripped of everything Rome once gave him, Maximus still carries the weight that made men follow him before any title did. The arena does not create that in him, it exposes it. And that is what Marcus Aurelius already seen. Long before Maximus is chained and sold, Marcus has already seen the contradiction in him. Maximus is terrifyingly useful to Rome, yet emotionally absent from the rewards Rome can offer. War has made him effective, but not hungry. Victory does not pull him deeper into empire. It makes home feel more urgent. That is why Marcus turns to him. And that choice wounds Commodus before a blade is ever drawn. Because Marcus is not only trusting Maximus, he is looking past his own son to do it.
For Commodus, the pain is not only being passed over, it is being passed over for a man who does not even hunger for the thing he has spent his life craving. Maximus does not steal anything from him, yet somehow makes him feel dispossessed. He does not reach for the throne, yet his presence makes Commodus look less like an emperor before he has even become one. That is the humiliation Commodus cannot forgive. For Maximus, Marcus's trust is not freedom, it is another chain. He wanted the war to end, he wanted the armor removed, he wanted Rome to stop needing him. But Rome needs him precisely because he is the kind of man who wants to leave it behind. Maximus is worthy. That is exactly the problem. In another world, refusing power might have protected him. In Rome, it only makes him harder to control. Ambition gives the powerful something to bargain with. Maximus gives them almost nothing. The thing he wants is not inside the palace. It is far away from Rome, in the life he keeps trying to return to.
So even when Maximus has nothing, Commodus still cannot feel above him. Maximus does not threaten him by reaching for power, he threatens him by proving that power is not enough. Every breath Maximus takes after the betrayal becomes a quiet failure of Commodus's cruelty. The man Commodus tried to erase is still there, wounded, enslaved, nameless to the crowd, but not empty. And that is the first layer of Maximus's tragedy. He wants almost nothing from Rome, and somehow that makes him more worthy than the men willing to destroy everything to possess it.
Commodus does not simply try to kill Maximus, he tries to make him disappear. If Maximus dies only as a general, his name might still survive with honor, soldiers might still remember him, Marcus's trust might still follow him like a shadow Commodus cannot escape. So Commodus needs more than a body removed. He needs a life dismantled. The first part is public. Maximus is no longer the general who gave Rome victory. He becomes a traitor, a threat, a man to be executed before the empire has time to remember what it owes him. But the deeper wound is waiting far from Rome. Commodus reaches Maximus's home before Maximus does. The wife and son who gave every battle its purpose are murdered before he can return to them. The home he carried through years of war becomes the place where his old life ends. When Maximus arrives, he is too late to save them. And in that moment, the road home dies before he does. That is what makes his survival so cruel. Maximus is still alive. The life that gave his survival meaning has been cut away.
Then the arena gives him another name, the Spaniard. It is not who he is, it is what the world calls him when it no longer knows what has been taken. Inside the arena, Maximus is given a smaller life, a life simple enough for strangers to understand. He is no longer Rome's general, no longer Marcus's trusted soldier, no longer the man who was trying to return to his family. He is a fighter in the sand. But Commodus's mistake is thinking that if the world forgets who Maximus was, Maximus will forget too. He does not. That is why the reveal matters. When Maximus removes the helmet and says his name, the moment lands with such force because the whole film has been trying to bury that name. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius. It is not just an introduction. It is a resurrection. For a moment, the slave disappears, and the general Rome tried to bury is standing there again.
But the line hurts because he does not stop at the title. He names the wound Commodus left behind. Husband to a murdered wife, father to a murdered son.
Maximus is not simply telling Commodus who he is forcing Commodus to face the one thing his cruelty failed to kill, the respect Maximus still commands. The crowd hears the name, Commodus hears the accusation, and suddenly killing Maximus is no longer simple. That is the second layer of Maximus's tragedy. He is not only fighting to avenge his family, he is fighting because Commodus tried to decide what his suffering would mean. A slave, a nameless fighter, a man the world was supposed to forget. But when Maximus claims his name in front of Rome, he takes that meaning back. Commodus can chain his body. He cannot make the name belong to him. And as long as Maximus can still claim that name, Commodus has not truly won. By the time Maximus becomes a gladiator, he has already lost the life that made him human. The arena does not care. To Maximus, every fight belongs to the aftermath of everything he lost. To Rome, it is noise, blood, and an afternoon away from boredom. That is the cruelty of the arena. It does not need to understand suffering in order to use it. The crowd does not see a husband trying to survive the murder of his wife. It does not see a father carrying the death of his son. It sees something simpler, a man who survives beautifully. The arena takes what is private in Maximus, grief, rage, the instinct to keep breathing, and turns it into something public enough to sell. And Maximus feels the obscenity of that. He is not fighting because he wants to be admired. He is not trying to turn pain into legend. When he wins, he does not look fulfilled. He looks further away from the life that victory can never bring back. Yet the crowd begins to love him. That is one of the bitterest turns in Gladiator. Rome destroys Maximus's life, then teaches itself to admire what remains. The same empire that took his home now cheers for the man who can no longer return to it. The same system that reduced him to a slave begins to treat his survival like greatness. Their love keeps him alive, but only as the thing they came to watch.
Every chant makes Commodus more afraid to kill him. Openly, their attention starts to build a wall around him. Still, that wall is also a cage. The people love Maximus because he gives them something to feel. They need the fights, they need the danger. They need him to keep walking back into the sand so his suffering can keep producing meaning for them. For Maximus, fame is not freedom. It is a louder cage. That is why his line to the crowd cuts so sharply. Are you not entertained? It is not just anger, it is disgust. Maximus is looking at people who are cheering for the remains of his life without knowing what they are cheering for. They see strength, skill, and a warrior worth worshipping. He feels what sits underneath it. What they call glory is built on grief. And this is where the arena begins to turn against Commodus. Commodus builds the games as a mirror for his own power. The blood is supposed to make Rome look up at him. Every spectacle is meant to prove that he can give the people fear, pleasure, and control in the same breath. But Maximus changes where the crowd looks. The people come for violence and find a man they can believe in. They come to be entertained, but they begin to respond to something Commodus cannot manufacture: dignity under suffering.
That is why Maximus becomes dangerous in a new way. Not as a general, not as a conspirator, but as the center of attention inside the Emperor's own theater. Commodus can arrange the games, command the guards, and sit above the arena in purple. But he cannot make the crowd love him the way it begins to love Maximus. And that failure happens in public, in the very place Commodus built to control what Rome feels. So the arena becomes a paradox. It is where Maximus is most dehumanized, also where his humanity becomes impossible to hide. The sword, the mask, the blood, the sand, all of it is meant to turn him into an object. Instead, it gives Rome a clearer view of the man Commodus tried to bury. That is the third layer of Maximus's tragedy. His pain gives him power, but it is power he never wanted. He survives because the crowd loves him, but the crowd loves him through the violence that keeps him trapped. Behind the symbol is still the man from the wheat field, the man whose deepest desire was never applause from Rome, but a life Rome has already turned into memory. And that is what makes the spectacle so painful. The world finally sees Maximus, only after the life he wanted is gone. By the end of Gladiator, Maximus has become useful to Rome again, not only as a soldier, but as a symbol Commodus can no longer control. But the tragedy is that none of this brings him closer to the life he wanted. Maximus does not fight Commodus because he wants Rome for himself. He fights because Commodus has become the face of every wound he carries. The murdered emperor, the burned home, the family he could not save, and the name Rome tried to bury. Commodus is not just the villain Maximus must defeat. He is the living point where all of Maximus's losses gather. So when Maximus finally faces him, the fight carries more weight than revenge. It is the last thing standing between Maximus and release. But even here, Commodus tries to control the meaning of the moment. He cannot Maximus cleanly, so he warns him before the duel begins. It is a perfect final act for a man who has spent the whole film trying to make weakness look like power. Even in the final duel, Commodus wants the image of courage without paying the cost of it. Maximus steps into the arena already wounded, with almost nothing left except the one thing Commodus never understood: honor. That is why the final duel feels less like a contest between two men than a judgment on everything they represent. Commodus fights to preserve the illusion of power. Maximus fights to end the lie. And when Commodus dies, Rome is freed from him. Maximus is not restored. That is the painful difference. The crowd sees justice. Lucilla sees the fall of a tyrant. Rome sees the possibility of becoming something Marcus once hoped it could be. But Maximus does not receive a future from that victory. Commodus can die, but the home Maximus wanted does not come back with him. Some losses do not reverse when justice arrives. That is what makes his victory so devastating. It is real, it matters, it gives Rome a chance to breathe again. But it does not save him. A lesser story would let justice become restoration. Gladiator understands the difference. Maximus's victory does not lead him forward into a new life. It leads him back to the image the film gave us at the beginning. The field, the wheat, the hand reaching for a piece that always felt close and always stayed out of reach. For the whole film, Maximus has been trapped between two worlds. Rome keeps demanding his body. Home keeps calling to what is left of his soul. Every battle pulls him deeper into the empire that destroyed him. Every vision of the field pulls him toward the only place where that destruction no longer matters.
At the end, those worlds finally separate. Rome can keep the general, the legend, and the name. What Maximus receives is smaller, quieter, and more important than all of it. He gets to go home. And that is the final cruelty of Gladiator. The film gives Maximus peace only when life has no more room to offer it. His victory matters to Rome. His death matters to himself. Because after all the blood, all the applause, and all the meanings placed on him by other people, Maximus is not remembered by the film as a conqueror. He is remembered as a man walking back through the field, toward the family Rome took from him, toward the life he never stopped reaching for. In the end, Gladiator does not leave Maximus on the throne, it leaves him in the field. After everything Rome took from him, this is the only place where Rome has no claim left. For Rome, Maximus becomes a name. For Maximus, the name is finally no longer a burden. He was a general, a slave, a gladiator, and a legend. But before all of that, he was simply a soldier trying to get home. And after everything Rome took from him, it could not follow him into that field. If you enjoy character-driven film analysis like this, consider subscribing for more stories about broken heroes, power, and the quiet tragedies hidden inside great films.